Welcome to Her Layered Life, where faith, family, business, and power of her influence come together. Because her life is layered and her influence can change the world. Welcome back to Her Layered Life. We've spent the last few episodes talking about the power in your hands, the importance of saying yes to her, and the magic that happens when women collaborate instead of compete. Today, we're slowing down. I want to talk about your layers and seasons, all of them, and what it really means to love the season you're in, even when it's messy, complicated, or completely different from what you pictured. I want to start with layers. What are layers? Maybe this is a little bit late into the podcast that is called Her Layered Life, but I really want to talk about layers and what those could be. So, a layer is your family, relationships, friends, your work, business, your faith, your personal growth, friendships, dreams, passions, your struggles, your lessons, and even your heartbreaks. Each of these layers have a color. Each of them has dimension. Each of them are individually, collectively working together. So this morning I went out on a run and I was stressed because I worked on this script for the podcast on Saturday, but Coop wanted to go to the gym. And so I said, I'll take you to the gym, but I've got to work on my script for the podcast. And so she went and shot and I started working on the podcast. Once I had the script all prepped and ready, I didn't have time to really go back and study it. And when it's a solo podcast, there is an element of studying and thinking and pondering what you want to say. You almost have to ask yourself the questions so that you are ready to talk about the topic the episode's going to be on. So this morning I woke up at 5:45 and I was like, oh my gosh, I will just go running and I'll take my phone and I'll just read through my script. And that's exactly what I did. It actually worked out so good because when I'm running, my mind is so clear. It's where I get honestly a lot of answers to questions, to prayers. I actually sounds terrible, but I have a lot of arguments in my mind. Like if there's conversations, arguments, or like situations that I need to hash out, I will do that while I run so that when I get to the conversation, I've actually had it several times out running and I've been able to kind of, comb through the things that I really want to talk about and what I really want to communicate. So I was out running and I was thinking about the layers of our lives. But then I was also thinking it's even crazier for women because the decisions that we make really do significantly shift the layers and specifically the seasons of our life. There is a lot of things that change as women when we choose to get married and when we choose to start a family and have babies. Because with that comes significant amounts of personal sacrifice. As women, we personally sacrifice a lot to become a mother. And I'm not saying that like, oh, what was me? Wah, wah, wah. But I think that it's really healthy and really important to understand that our seasons significantly change when we become mothers. I've been through many seasons through motherhood, right? And pretty long lasting seasons. I was on a group chat with my girlfriends from college and we try to get together at least every couple years. We've been pretty good about it, but the text threads coming in and there's like, we got to get together this weekend, this weekend. And what I realize is they're actually in a different season of life than I am right now because their kids, they have two or three and their kids are all really grown up. They're my three oldest kids. We all basically had kids at the same time. And so their oldest is, 20 years old, 18 years old. And I'm still in the throngs of motherhood, right? Where I've still got four kids at home. My youngest is 11. And so for the first time, we've actually been in different seasons, this little friend group of mine from college. So there is lots of things and lots of things to unpackage there because seasons are very important when it comes to women and recognizing the season we are in. If we're comparing our life to someone else's life and they are actually in significantly different seasons, we become very unhappy with where we are and we become very unrealistic with what we can anticipate and expect from ourselves, especially when when we're cross season comparing. That is very, very, very hard on us. So the layers also are very interesting because layers can change and the importance of the layer can change. For me, a very high important layer for me is my family. And so friendship, even my business, maybe even some of my personal growth, some of my fitness goals, those sort of different layers are going to somewhat take a back seat to my top priority layer, which is my family. And everything else is going to have to support that and fit in. My business is probably another one of those layers that are, hopefully not ahead of my family, but are rivaling that importance level. And then basketball season is coming up. And so as basketball season comes in, that layer of my life is going to take a higher precedence at time than even my family and honestly, my business as well. So even throughout the year, my layers kind of shift and flow and have a different season per se. And I think that it's very, very important for us to talk about that and to recognize that and to be kind and grace and show grace for ourselves, depending on what season we're on or what season we are in.
I got to give a little shout out to Hafty. Hafty is the perfect layering shirt for women. It adds a sleeve and a neckline to all of your sleeveless tops, dresses, and jumpers and allows you to wear all of today's fashions without all the extra bulk and heat, but you get to do it modestly. So I've actually got one on. This is our brand new ruche sleeve, cuts off right here. It is perfect for this maxi dress and just gives me a more modest coverage, but it also lets me extend my wardrobe all year round. Go ahead and use Her Layered Life to save 15% off your first purchase. Go check us out at hafty.com.
So back in the day, I'm raising all these babies, right? And I had kids actually quite a bit earlier. I had 3 kids when my youngest sister got married, and actually 3 kids when my second sister got married. I had a head start, right, when it came to babies. And by the time we had our first nephew on my side, or niece actually, my baby was 5. So I was 4 kids deep when the second grandchild was born, in our family. So the seasons that I was in was way different than any of my siblings. But I'm so grateful. And in that season of life, my sister, um, Lindsay specifically, she called me all the time and she helped and she jumped in and she was like the favorite aunt because she was so involved. But there was no high expectation of like, Amanda, you never call me. Like, I'm going to stop calling you because you never reciprocate that and you don't call me enough. She understood very, very well, even though she was not a mother yet herself. She very much understood that our seasons are significantly different and that role needed to play more with her, that reaching out, those phone calls. And I'll be forever grateful for just how well she understood where we were different wise when it came to seasons of life. So that is something that I really want to kind of weave in and out of this podcast throughout is really focusing and looking at the seasons and the layers and how layers will ebb and flow as far as priority. And that's okay. In fact, it's important. It's important that we are consistently looking at those layers and consistently recognizing what season we're in, to make sure that we are actually being fair. Fair is kind of a little dumb word to me because life's not fair. But for lack of another word that I really can't think of right now, it's just important to recognize that and to be graceful when it comes to that. So let's talk about the trap of comparing. Now, I don't know for all of you out there, have you ever listened to the let them theory? That's where I'm going to kind of come into this because there is a chapter 10, that talks about comparison, competition. And I think it is so important, specifically when we're talking to women. We are awful when it comes to comparison and competing and not being able to have the ability to say, oh my gosh, she is doing fantastic. And a lot of times we'll be like, oh my gosh, we look and see at everyone's successes, specifically women, and we think, oh my gosh, I will never be able to do that. And instead of it being proof that you can do X, Y, and Z, we actually take that proof that's sitting right out in front of us and we actually make that the reason why we can't do something, which is actually kind of hilarious to me. But the trap is when we start comparing our behind the scenes layers to someone else's highlights, or we start comparing our season of life, or maybe our priority of layers, like whatever layer is our priority, may be significantly different to a season and the priority of that other person's layer. And we try to compare it. And it's not right and it doesn't work. And all it does is it leads to dissatisfaction, it leads to sadness, and it really leaves us being very ungrateful for the life that we're living right now. So we scroll Instagram, classic space and place for us to really get compared, like competitive, right? And comparing our life to somebody else's. But we look at it, we say, she's doing it all. She's got the house, the body, the business, the balance, the holidays, the vacations, the kids are perfect. Her aesthetic is lovely. Um, but we only see one of those layers, right? That's the only one on social that people, that's the only layer they're showing. We don't know what's happening all behind the scenes. So there's a part in the let them theory that I love. And Mel talks about how instead of competing, we choose to create. When we see someone living something you've dreamed of, instead of thinking, that'll never be me, you can shift it to, she is proof it's possible. Her success isn't your threat. Think about that and say it again. Her success isn't your threat. It's your permission slip. Because you are seeing it somewhere else, that gives you permission, if you choose to, if you are willing to make the sacrifices and to do the things, it is giving you permission and proof that you can do it too. Something that I think a lot about is God. And I think about how we think that God's blessings are finite, right? That God is capped on how many blessings he can give the world or his children. And that's simply not true. God's blessings are infinite. Just because he's blessing someone over here doesn't mean that he has to take off. Like, let's pretend we have two plates and this plate is for Martha and this is my plate. And Martha seems to be getting all these blessings. It's not because he's taking the blessings off your plate and putting them onto Martha's plate. There are infinite amount of blessings always. And so God is willing and ready to bless all of us if we are willing and ready to take the steps and the things that and make the sacrifices and make the decisions and the choices that we need to be making in order to be blessed by his hand. So remember that. Remember that success and seeing someone else's success is not a threat. It's actually a permission slip and proof that you can do it too. And that God is constantly ready and waiting to bless our lives. It is not a contest. And it's not like, oh, you get 3 blessings. Oh, now I gave her 3. Now I got to take a couple from you. His blessings are infinite and he will bless us in ways that honestly we can't even imagine possible. So when we stop competing and start creating, we finally start living our own layers, not hers, which is super, super important to remember. All right. Learning to love the season you're in. So this is actually a very interesting time to talk about this. Right now, Hafti is in what I would consider a rebuilding time. We've been through times where things are just exploding, and that has been so fun and so exciting. And now we are in a time of rebuilding. And I can tell you that it's generally in the times of rebuilding that you learn the very most. It's classic because you can be doing something for 16 years and be getting and handed over the biggest education of your entire business, life. But I have been learning so much. And it is this, and when you are in a rebuilding season or a growing season or a gestational season, because everything also has a gestational time period, right? Where we might say, okay, I want to do this and I'm going to start working towards this. And just because we say it doesn't mean that it doesn't take a gestational time period to be able to help things to grow step by step. It kind of reminds me of Alyssa's podcast when she said, what did she say? God ordered my steps. And we have to trust the process, right? We have to trust the gestational period where God is helping this order the steps in a way that is going to bless our lives in the most significant ways possible. So learning to love the season you're in is so important. I feel kind of like an old lady. I don't know about you, but I swear all the time at church or at the park or at the grocery store when, I can still remember 4 or 5 little babies going to the grocery store, having one toddler in the cart, one sitting in like the baby seat, and then trying to make sure I didn't lose any of the kids around the cart as I'm shopping and gathering and trying to figure out how I'm going to get all the groceries in the cart with, with a little child in there. So I'm building the groceries in like a tower around the child in the cart. And just, lots of the comments like, wow, you've got your arms full, or wow, really love this because it's not going to last forever. And these kids are going to grow up and blah, 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 blah. And when you're in the moment, you're not really loving, maybe that experience. I was loving that season. I really did love having all these. In fact, I would go back to that. I know that sounds crazy, but I loved having little children in my home. And I actually loved being I still do. I love little kids. But I remember thinking, how in the world is this ever going to be over? Like when you're in the middle of all of that stuff, the grocery carts with kids in it, and the early mornings, not sleeping through the night, the diaper changes, the throw up on your shoulder, the blowouts, the won't eat, won't sleep, all of those things, they seem so forever, right? And if we'll just take a step back, and if we'll just be reminded and listen to the little old lady that said, love the season you're in. She didn't say it exactly like that, but she did say something, similar to that. And if you can really just step back a little bit and be like, and remember, this is not going to last forever. It's not. And there will come a time that you will be looking back, and I do it all the time now, looking back saying, oh my gosh, those were such wonderful days. So taking a step back, recognizing it's not going to last forever. The season you're in is not going to last forever, and really loving and being grateful for that season, because it really is an incredible opportunity to grow and develop skills, temperaments, patience, humility, all those important things, as we're in in the different seasons. And that's really what seasons are all about, right? Is blessing us with the experiences and the opportunities to grow and develop and to become better, become a more powerful person than what we started. I was at where was I? It was last week. It was a couple weeks at church, and it was one of my favorite people. They're leaving to go on a mission. And her whole talk was about if vacuum, touch full the vacuum. This is classic for layers of my life. We are currently shooting a podcast, and we have children in the basement. I let Covington stay home. We've got Brandon and Brixton in the basement. We've got the house cleaner that we are stopping and starting while the vacuum starts. She definitely is upstairs now because she was downstairs and we couldn't hardly hear it. And I'm pretty sure she's on her phone, like talking to her somebody. And then my nanny just showed up to come over and start laundry and get dinner on. Anyways, this was actually classic. This is a classic example of layers. And it's also a classic example of you just got to do the best with what you got. It's okay if we're shooting a podcast in the middle of my room with house being clean, 3 kids and an adult downstairs and laundry being folded. It actually is, it's actually what it's all about, ironically. All right. And she was talking about in her talk that when we come to church, when we say our prayers, when we read our scriptures, when we have these experiences with God, or when we have experiences that will make us a better person, do we actually become a better person? Because if we actually don't become better through the experiences that we're having, then what was the point of the experience? And I took that to heart, and I really started thinking about that. And that's kind of how this applies to our seasons and our layers is God and this life is so much about experience, and how through the experiences that he is blessing us with, or that life just throws at us, right? There are so many experiences in our lives that I don't think God has anything to do with. I think it's mortality, and it's choice, and it's agency, and it's what I've chosen to do. Do I think God has very much to do with how we work through those experiences, through the challenges, through the trials? 100%. Do I think that not even the super positive, wonderful things that we're also doing that comes from experiences, I believe God is also a part of making that even better than what we could have imagined. But if I'm having an experience, whether it be good or a bad one, or a hard one, or a trial, or a fantastic, joyful one, am I coming out of those experiences better? Am I a better person because of them? Because if I'm not, there was really no value to it, even the trials. So that's something to remember, that each of the seasons that we're in, gives us opportunity to become better. And what are we learning and how are we growing to become the person that we really want to be through the season, the experiences that we're currently in? And the best way to be able to become better and to be improved by our experiences through our seasons with all the layers is that we shift from comparison to creation. Is what this principle is what helps us love the season we're in. Because when we stop looking sideways, right? When we stop looking at what everybody else is doing, you start looking within. Some seasons are full of momentum, like we talked about. Half tea has been full of momentum at times. And then the wins, the growth, the excitement, the others are more quiet. The root, the building seasons where the work is unseen but essential. And I can see that also in motherhood, particularly in the early days of motherhood with little tiny children and you're really not getting out of your house. You're kind of home and you're with these babies, particularly for, stay-at-home mom. And you're doing all of these tiny little acts of service for these little people that literally cannot do it for themselves. They would not be able to survive if it wasn't for your tiny little acts of service and helping them, helping them stay alive to keep a pulse. And those really are times of the building season where the work is unseen, but this work is super essential. I've lived both. So just the other day, this is what I was talking about because this is where it comes in, this world of creation, not competition, not looking sideways, because each of us are living our unique season, our unique layers within our seasons, and it's very important again to be inspired and not be like, I don't know, what would be the word, princess? Like, instead of being inspired, like being inspired by what other people are doing, but not allowing what they're doing to make us feel less than who we are, or not like, oh, I could never do that. When others like live a life that inspires us, we want it to inspire us, not like close us off. Anyways, you guys can in the comments down below, help me put to a word to that, but that will inspire us to create, right? Inspire us to want to just create a life that we want and that we're super happy for. The other day, so this is what I was talking about, is when we also are combining different layers, right? Like for me, I've got the layers of motherhood, I've got the layers of business, I've got the layers of coaching, I've got the layers of service within my community, within my church. There's a lot of different layers that we're all living every single, honestly, every single moment of our lives. And what makes it complicated sometimes is trying to find the flow. I'm not a big fan of balance, and you guys can throw tomatoes at me, but when people are like, you got to find balance, I don't believe in honestly in balance necessarily. I believe in flow. I think that if I'm at work, then clearly I am working and I'm not at home doing the things that need to be done at home. So there's imbalance with that. And sometimes in my mother life, my kids need me more. And so the balance is more into the household and less in the business. I brought this up in a podcast before, but basketball season is starting. And so when basketball starts, that is going to put some imbalances within home life, business. And luckily, I have an incredible family that understands kind of the ins and outs of that. But also, I have an incredible team that supports me and allows me to be able to go and do those sort of things. And they pick up the extra pieces. But balance is something that I don't believe in, but I do believe in flow. But it's the flow of life that I feel like we can really work at. The flow of how we come in and out of these different layers becomes a lot more seamless. And it honestly allows for the actual balance to happen, right? I believe you have to have flow in order to find maybe that balance that you're chasing. So, just for instance, flow for me is I have a house cleaner. She's actually here right now. And she has been with me for 15 years. I hired her, she started coming in once a week when I had Cooper. So for 15 years, she has been a huge part of my flow, my finding that balance. I just, if I wanted to be able to have flow between work and kids and that sort of life, I didn't want to take the only time that I had with my kids and be this drill sergeant and make us all clean the house together, which is not necessarily a bad thing because, I mean, obviously my kids still know how to clean and work, and there's lots of other ways. But when I was annoyed all the time with trying to clean the house with little kids everywhere, but I found like I wasn't feeling like that flow. I wasn't able to flow in and out of work and house and all of those sort of things. I also hired my first nanny after Cooper. So Cooper is the sixth child in our family. And so I really felt like in order to find flow, which ultimately led to feeling that balance, was hiring a nanny to come in and help do the things, make sure we have dinner, make sure that the laundry was getting done, to be with the kids while I could not be here. And that was a huge blessing. I didn't ever have to take my kids to childcare or to daycare, but I hired girls, young ladies, to come in and to be here in the home so that the flow of my family life still stayed the same. So I've been super blessed with those particular things. But this little story that happened Saturday when I was working on the podcast and Cooper wanted to shoe, I was feeling like this sense of guilt. And then I was feeling annoyed because then she wanted me to get the shooting machine out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I already told you. I didn't say this. This was a conversation in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to set up the shooting machine. Just rebound for yourself or whatever. And then I settled down a little bit. And I was like, no, this will be fine. Just get the shooting machine up. It will help her get more shots up. And then and then all of a sudden, because the shooting machine was up, she was happy. She was shooting. She shot forever. I was able to get all of my podcasting script done and put together. And I thought this is like the classic example of my daughter wanted to go shoot. Mom guilt set in. I should be out there. I'm the darn tootin' high school basketball coach. I should be out there helping her, running her through drills, watching her form, watching her footwork, especially because I'm her mom too. But then I thought, no, I have created this opportunity and this environment for her to be able to come and develop her skills. It doesn't mean I have to do every little thing. It doesn't mean same as I don't have to clean my house. I don't have to, be here every second of every day. There are things that I can do. There are tools that I can use to help be able to facilitate and have that flow and have those things happen, create the space, the environment for my kids to still thrive. But I don't have to be in the very center of all of it. So that's just my example of just the importance of learning to love the season you're in, recognizing there are tools, there are things within your world that can help you flow easier and better in and out of those different seasons. If it works for you, if it doesn't, then it doesn't. But just really settling into stop competing, stop looking sideways, recognize where you are, and love the season that you're in. The next thing I want to talk about is how does this connect to your bigger mission? I kind of already touched on this a little bit, but when you learn to honor your own layers, your desires are super important. Those what brings you joy? What do you really love to do? Desires are also, I believe, manifestations of what could actually be your life. What could actually be your goals? Are those desires, goals, and our wants, and what we essentially have in the end always started as a little inkling, a little desire in our heart. So when you learn to honor your own layers, your own desires, it becomes easier to honor other people, right? That was something that I learned very early on, is that I didn't understand early on what it looked like to be a working mom. In fact, I didn't understand why anybody would want to work because I was so happy as a mom staying at home. And then when I started working and recognizing just how much joy I found there as well, I was actually way kinder to other working moms. And I became especially more empathetic to the kind of load that actually to the kind of load that it actually takes to be able to do both. And I became more compassionate and empathetic towards moms, especially moms that didn't really have a choice to work. They just had to work in order to make the family dynamic work. And I became way less judgmental when I recognized and started to honor other women's layers and other women's desires and other women's seasons of life. Because you know what it feels like to juggle. We know what it feels like to rebuild, and we know what it feels like to rise. That's the heartbeat of her layered life. Every woman you meet carries layers you can't see. And when we hold space for each other's seasons, we really can rise stronger together. And I believe that is, I'm going to throw in a little pitch for athletics. I talk about this a lot just on my social media, especially when sports and when basketball season starts to happen. But I believe that one of women's greatest weaknesses are actually our inability to cheer each other on. We struggle with uh, being able to celebrate one another, to being able to honestly and sincerely be happy for one another when we are achieving our goals. And I think it's because we try to compare each other's seasons. I really do. I think we think, oh, I wish I could do that. When really, it's not your season to do that. And honestly, it's probably not even a layer that you value of your life. It's probably not even on your layer, uh, in any of your layers. But I think that athletics is such an awesome opportunity, particularly team athletics. I think team athletics, every girl should play team athletics at some level because it teaches her how to be a good teammate. It teaches her how to work well with other women. And it also teaches her how to celebrate and cheer on her teammates. And I believe when a girl learns at a young age to celebrate and cheer on her teammates, other women, it literally sets her up to be significantly more successful. Because as we all know, and maybe not all of us, but something that I have learned is that I cannot do it all. I can't. As much as I would love to be able to do it all, I can't do it all. I need the hands of other women that are great and men that are great. And when I was able to be like, I can't do it all, that takes me back to Noelle. When I first met Noelle, she's my business partner for 8 or 9 years. And I was at a place in the company that I knew, given my family dynamic and giving my layers and what was important in my life, I knew that I could not take Kafti to the next step. And then at that point, when I realized that, that's when he sent Noelle that had significantly different skill sets, different gifts, different connections, and different abilities to run a company. And she just kind of came in and she expanded things. She didn't diminish my role. She didn't diminish what I was good at. She actually made me better. She actually made the company better through her gifts and through my ability to recognize that I needed help. And I really think that a lot of that came back from my roots in athletics and recognizing that as an athlete, there is not one athlete on the planet. And I'm going to go back to Michael Jordan because he still is the GOAT in my book, and he is the best men's basketball player of all time. I could talk about Caitlin Clark. She's an incredible basketball player as well, as new on the scene over the last couple of years. But neither one of these athletes could have ever, ever, ever been the best that they could be without their coaches, without their teammates, and without that network of people around them, supporting them, helping them become the very best they could be. So women, particularly girls, learning how and what that looks like is so important. And I just can't think of anything that teaches those principles better than athletics, because athletics brings out the best and it brings out the worst. And especially when you're on a court and you're still competing against each other for time and for a spot on this team, it forces you to really have to find a balance between being competitive, but also creating the best team possible. And what does that look like? And what is your role? And you're not just the sub, or you're not just the girl that only gets just 6 points, but your role on this team is so important. And how you show up for that role and how you cheer your other teammates in their role does not diminish your role at all. It actually helps you create and become the best at it possible. So that's my little basketball, how that connects bigger to our bigger mission is our ability to cheer one another on is actually something of the most, it's the most, one of the most important things as women we can learn how to do. And that really just goes back to recognizing that we are creating incredible opportunities for one another, not just ourselves, but all those in our circle when we choose to create and, and love the season that we're in. All right. So let's talk about the 5 practical ways to live your layers fully. So name your season. Name it. Recognize what season you're in. And don't label it as good or bad. Just be honest. Maybe it's a building season. Maybe it's a healing season. Or maybe it's a slow down season. Or maybe it's a foot on that pedal, and you are grinding, right? It could be that season too. Name it. Don't label it. It's not good or bad. It's just an incredible opportunity to become the person you want to be. Two, nurture your layers. What's being neglected, but what's important to you? Your health? Is it your friendship right now? Is it your family? Are you seeking, do you feel this nudge to seek a creative outlet? Um, Give it a little love and be consistently recognizing the layers that are important. What ones have the highest priority for you? And then make sure that those priorities are in order. Because if the priorities are out of order, that is also sometimes when you will find yourself looking sideways and getting competitive. So recognize the layers, recognize what layer is important to you, and make sure you prioritize those layers to make sure that you are finding joy where you are. And then speak kindness over your current layer. So this kind of goes back to number one. And particularly speak kindness over her layers. Her layers are not yours. Her season is not yours. And making sure that we are kind about it. So look in the mirror and say, this layer matters. This layer is mine. That layer for her matters. That layer is hers. And don't compare. There is no sense in comparing, but make sure that and this is just like a little challenge, but in your journal, write this down. What is God teaching me in this layer? And I think that when we start to recognize and we bring God into our layers, we bring God more into our seasons, and we recognize that if we trust Him and we trust His words and we trust in Him and all the things that He promises us, that if we bring God into our layers and into our seasons, we will allow Him to magnitude and we will recognize that through and with Him, every season, every layer, although it may not be like our favorite one, can ultimately help us become the best version of who we are. And God has a version that is so much cooler, so much better, so much powerfuler, more powerful, more powerful than what we could ever make for ourselves. So be kind. Be kind over our layers, be kind over our seasons, and invite God in to let Him make sure that His eyes and His hand in ours, hand in hand, we are becoming the person that He needs us to be. So that is episode, whatever episode I'm on, I'm not even sure. Just peeling back the curtain a little bit, like we talked about, but really just wanted to share that through my own personal experiences and just remind us all that whatever season, whatever layer you're in matters. And it is a beautiful time that if we take the time to be grateful and recognize the power and the blessings that it is giving us. I know it's hard when we're right in the thick of it. Oh, we really can find significant amounts of opportunities. And it is not about competing. It's about creating and loving the layer and the season that you are in at this time. So let's remember, when women support each other with intention, we rise together. Your dollar is more than currency, it's influence, it's change, it's empowerment. Because every season, even the hidden ones, matters in your story. Until next time, let your choices shape the world you want to see and love every layer of your life.